All right. Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to tonight's session, which focuses on the ways that generative AI tools are transforming or disrupting or both teaching and learning. So first of all, thank you for joining us. As I said, we are vast amount of time zones, and tonight the panelists are from 4 different time zones, everything ranging from around 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. on Thursday morning. So we're especially delighted to welcome our 4 panelists, and we will begin tonight's discussion with a short presentation from each of the panelists. And after that, and so I'm going to ask you to leave your questions to the end. You can put your questions into the chat, of course, and I will make sure that we get to them after we've heard from the panelists. So our first panel member tonight will be Dr. John Spencer, who is an associate professor of education at George Fox University in Oregon and a former middle school teacher. John is also an author, keynote speaker, and consultant. After hearing from John, we will literally zoom across the world to Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan to hear from Dr. Mariia Guzikova, the director of the Center for Teaching and Learning and Technology at the University of Central Asia. Mariia will bring the perspective of faculty and students at remote mountain campuses in Narin, Kyrgyzstan, and Korog, Tajikistan. After Mariia, we will shift our mindsets and hear from Dr. Krissy, Venosdale, and Debbie, who is Dr. Debbie Fucoloro, who is a ETMOOC conspirator, and they will bring us the pre-kindergarten to grade 12 perspective. Krissy is the lower school innovation coordinator at the Kincaid School. She's a maker, dreamer, coder, robot wrangler, forever learner. And Debbie is the coordinator, the technology coordinator and instructional technology specialist at St. Margaret Mary School, pre-kindergarten to grade 8 school, where she oversees the innovation lab. So all of on the ETMOOC website, I have put a link to the LinkedIn profiles of all of the panelists today. And so if you want to find out more about them, you can certainly check that information there. So now, because I'm just really excited to hear from everyone, and then, as I said, I will try to keep note of questions, but we'll take questions at the end so that we make sure everybody has a chance to present this perspective. We're going to hand it over to John.
Hi, welcome. So glad that you are letting me share. So here we go. One of my thoughts is this question of how is it impacting the way that we do our work. And, you know, I've found myself saying statements like the AI revolution is here, it's already here. But I think what we need to recognize ahead of time is this reality that AI is not new. Everyone in this group has been thinking about these things for a while. It's been an evolution as much as a revolution, right? There's been many different iterations, and generative AI is just the latest version of that. I myself am not an AI expert. I will own that. My area that I am really into is what does it mean to do authentic learning in a changing world? And one of those big changes that we see is artificial intelligence. So I want to begin with that notion. The first time that I saw AI change what it could mean to be a teacher and a professor was around about 2016. And I saw for the first time ever what more advanced AI could do in terms of giving feedback on student work. And a professor at a university asked me to identify which one was AI and which one wasn't. And I failed, right? And I felt like in that moment, I could not tell the difference. I had failed the Turing test. I wasn't sure if this was an example of the ELIZA effect or if I just truly had failed the Turing test, but it didn't matter. I could not tell a difference. And I, in that moment, was horrified. I felt this sense of defeat. I felt terrified. I had been paying attention to aspects of AI for a while, and this felt different for me. And I was asking this question, will AI replace me? And I went into that full-blown panic mode, right? As I started thinking about it, I remember walking to my hotel that particular day. I just kept thinking, what does this mean for assessment? What does this mean for teaching? What does this mean? And then I started thinking, what does this mean for deep fakes and information literacy and all of these other things? And I think it's important for educators across the board, whether it's in higher ed, whether it's in K-12, that it's all right to be feeling this huge mix of emotions. I have experienced all of these, excited about the possibilities. I can tell you right now, outside of education, I use ChatGPT as my own version of the TV show Chopped. I take 3 ingredients from the refrigerator. I ask for something healthy, something spicy, something I can do in 15 minutes, and it gives me step-by-step directions. I love it, right? I'm excited about the ways that I can use it. I've loved it as an example generator in our classes. I've worked with students showing them how they can use it for lesson planning. So I work with pre-service teachers. At the same time, I'm scared about our future, not so much the cheating aspects. I'm worried about things like deep fakes, information literacy, certain things like that. I'm still confused by how it works. So for now, I guess it's been 6 or 7 years, I've been interviewing as many people like I can on this subject. And I still don't completely understand. I understand in theory, but I feel that sense of confusion. And then I'm curious about how to use it. And sometimes I find myself getting angry. I feel this big mix of emotions. And I think it's important as we think about this to imagine what does this mean for our classrooms, for what we do within education. And I think it's important that we start with the question, what does AI do well, right? So if we think about what it does well, it's great with ideation, generative AI is, fast responses, the ability to synthesize information. As I think about what it does poorly, it lacks empathy and emotional intelligence. It lacks contextual understanding. It lacks a true sense of voice. And for that reason, it will perpetuate misinformation and biases within the data set, right? So what does this mean for students? As we think about this within education, there's a few different approaches that schools tend to go toward. One is this futuristic embrace of artificial intelligence. And this is the notion of saying, what is it that AI can do? And if AI can do it, students don't need that. And when I think about that, I think there's a concern I have with beginning from a place of, I'm getting an echo. Oh, there we go. If folks could mute it. So what can AI do instead, I think, is the wrong question here. And the reason why is we often engage in work that can be automated, right? So I think about, I had a friend, and I'm still getting an echo.
I think
Just
Karen
take a
needs
moment
to
and everyone mute their mics.
Karen needs to mute her mic.
Yeah, Karen, could you mute your mic?
Sorry. So if we think about this idea of what can AI do, the truth is there's a lot of things that we do in life that can be automated that are still worth doing, right? And I think about what it was like when we brought our first child home from the hospital, and a friend of ours had been knitting a blanket while he was off at war. And we get this blanket and it has mistakes and it has a human touch, and it is nothing like the automated blanket you could get at Walmart, right? Or I think about in the midst of the pandemic, at the beginning of social isolation, I asked my students to share what is a healthy coping strategy they've used to deal with social isolation. And they talked about baking, they talked about art, they talked about gardening, they talked about all these different things that can already be automated. Some of them with AI, some of them with other forms of machine learning, some of them just with pure automation. So I think that's the wrong question to be asking. And the techno-futurist sort of embraces tech at all costs without asking, what do we lose when we automatically default to AI first? I think that's really important that we avoid that. Just because you can automate something doesn't mean you should all the time. But trap number 2 is the lock it and block it approach. And I've seen this in the past. When I was a classroom teacher, I watched as teachers asked to have spell checker blocked because they thought it would make you a bad speller. I watched them block YouTube at one time. I watched them block all of these different things. Google was considered cheating at one time. So it's important that this lock it and block it approach says, let's just avoid it. Let's go to handwritten tests. I've seen, for example, certain professors that are bringing back the blue books, which can be really ableist in certain ways for students in particular who don't handwrite and who need the technology. But there's some big challenges there. But I think there's a third option. And I think this is what I would love to see schools at all places embrace. And it's the human approach. And this is the notion of saying, what are the skills that our students will need in a world of smart machines? So in a world of change, they'll need to be divergent thinkers. In an automated world, they're going to need to learn how to use some analog tools. In a world of AI, they're going to need to embrace wisdom, empathy, curation, curiosity. And these are things that at the K-12 level, a lot of them are already developing with things like graduate profiles. So this is nothing new. And in a world of AI, it's the notion that our students will need to become really good at what AI can't do and really different at what it can do. And so this is the idea of using AI sort of as the beginning place, as the starting place, as the vanilla. I keep hearing people say, AI will kill the essay. It won't, but it will change the way we do essays. So for example, I took a writing prompt that I used to use with my middle schoolers, and it wasn't very good, but it was vanilla, right? It was the beginning place that I began with this. And then I made it my own by modifying it, by adding context, by adding my own quirky humor, by adding my own style. And that, I think, is what we need to see students do, is to use it as a tool to create the beginning place, to create a template. In some cases, they'll use it to create sort of an exemplar that they can look at and modify. In some cases, it might be that what it does is it speeds up certain monotonous tasks within creativity. For example, video editing or audio editing. I'm going to end by just saying one quick story. When I was in middle school, I did a National History Day project, which is a thing in the US. I know some of y'all are in other nations. And for me to do a slide presentation took so many hours, so much monotony, and so much money. To make a slide presentation, I didn't sketch out a slide and put it onto my computer, right? Which is what I do here, right? Little drawings and stuff. I had to take a physical picture, take it to the drugstore, get it developed. You would get this white slide. You would slip the slide into a carousel and you had a slide projector. To record my voice and splice it revolved reel-to-reel tape that you would cut with a razor and splice it together. All of it took forever. To do my works cited page, make one mistake, I would have to fix it. What I can now do in creative work, whether it's videos, podcasts, slide presentations, is so much faster because the tech has taken care of the monotony. And so what I've encouraged my students to think about is, how can AI be a tool to take care of some of the more monotonous aspects of your job so you can focus on the human element? So maybe it does some of the grading, you do more of the assessment. Maybe it helps come up with some lesson plans, but you contextualize it for your own environment, your own students, because you know them best and you make it more interesting. So in the end, that's my hope, is that we we use it in a way that is human-centered and human first, and then tech second. So those are my thoughts.
Very much, John. You've actually given us a whole lot of things to think about. I love the questions. And I particularly like the graphic you shared about all of the different possibilities. I think I'm going to build on that for a presentation that I have to do shortly, because this sort of captured all of the different emotions I think many of us are facing, right? We're all kinds of different things at the same time. So thank you for that. And we'll come back to questions from all the participants shortly. And Mariia, if you could share your screen and give us the perspective from Central Asia.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Great. Oh, okay. So I'm Mariia. I'm, as Valerie has introduced me, I work at the University of Central Asia. And I feel that in my presentation, there will be many overlaps or parallels to what John has just described. But what I will try to do in my presentation, I will try to speak about the experience of teachers at our university in the region, in different countries of Central Asia. And let me start first with the picture of our university. These are Pamiri Mountains, the roof of the world, as they call it. We are a very small institution. We have only 60 faculty members working at the School of Arts and Sciences in 4 major programs, which allows us to have kind of a lab to observe every one of them with their practices, approaches, and hear every voice. So probably it's not enough for a sample, so to say, but it gives us an idea. This is an international institution. We have local instructors, but we also have a lot of international faculty. And this university is part of the Agahan Development Network, one of the largest developmental agencies in the world. And I'm mentioning it because this is not a very usual university. This is a unique university in terms of its developmental mission, which reflects on the teaching practices, on the mission, on the vision, on the approaches, on everything. We are located in mountainous regions in Tajikistan, in Kyrgyzstan, and in Kazakhstan. We are supposed to build a campus in Kazakhstan in the future. Probably we will live up to it. We also have centers of professional and continuous education in Afghanistan, which is an interesting story to tell in terms of internet connection and AI. And we teach in English. So to give you an idea of how I go to work, this is the picture of my usual road to Horok campus. It would take me on this kind of a road 7 hours to go to Horok campus. And here, I believe it's important to mention that in Tajikistan, for example, the use of OpenAI is restricted. So you cannot get it in the usual way, which does not prevent our students to use VPN and register, but it does prevent our teachers to use VPN and register because, as you know, there is this great divide, digital divide between the students who are born with the screen in mother's hand. Probably they see the screen first and then the mother's face second, or a gadget. And the teachers, when the teachers face a situation when they have several clicks away from their goal, they might be hesitant to go this path. So in Horok, what we see is that the students use, or let's speak about the notorious or famous, I don't know, ChatGPT. So they all use ChatGPT. We see it from our firewall. We can, from our IT department, we see that the students use ChatGPT And funny story in Tajikistan is that usually when I ask them for various purposes, whether they use it or not, they ask me, do you ask us whether we cheat with ChatGPT? I would ask them for various purposes, like I would be interested in how they use it really, but they have this bias towards cheating, which makes me think that they are not that concerned about generative AI. They've been using, as John has mentioned, it was an evolution. So they've been using many tools on their way to, I would say, to make shortcuts very often to optimize their work, not only to cheat, but also to optimize their work. And now they are just adding new tools to their repertoire of using shortcuts. So it's not that different from YouTube videos they would sometimes prefer as compared to a usual lecture, I don't know. So they are using it. The teachers in Horo campus are not that involved into ChatGPT business at the moment, because it's really like they need to generate this special phone number to register and so on and so forth. So it would take them time. So what I will try to do in my presentation, I am looking for, I know it's been not a long time, or maybe the time was not enough to try to make to look conclusively at what is going on with the use of AI in teaching and learning. But zooming into what I can see at our university going on, and I invite Valerie to comment because she's been working at the University of Central Asia for a longer time than I do. So I've mentioned this students-teachers divide. So the students are much more comfortable with all AI tools, and teachers, I can see that teachers, there are three categories that probably go along with this innovation curve kind of way. So they are welcoming adopters. Sometimes you see, especially in the STEM courses, like a fully fledged use of AI, welcoming approach to AI, coding with students, writing essays with students. And there are people whom I call concerned opponents, or we call them here technophobes. I think we might now speak about AI phobes, but they are mostly concerned because of their assessments, because of academic integrity issues. And there are people who are hesitant to try it out because it does not affect, as they see, their usual the business of teaching, but they would probably try it out under pressure or with support. And very often we see that those people who never tried ChatGPT are very often afraid of the consequences of it. But as soon as they start working with it, they understand the limits, the benefits, and they are more comfortable in introducing it in their teaching. What I also can say is that probably it's not the case with everybody. I'm just sharing my very narrow kind of experience here. Is that people who are more comfortable with teaching in general, so they have a broader repertoire of teaching strategies, they are more willing to innovate and experiment with AI tools than people who are not that fixed on teaching. They are more on research side. Of course, as John mentioned, we speak a lot about how assessment of the courses should be changed with regard to this disruptive technology. But it's not that we have already a strategy of how we are going to change it. It's like in the discussion is at a very early stage. What we have done so far at the university, that there has been, as I've told already, the university is very small in terms of numbers of faculty members, so we can openly discuss all the issues that we are concerned about. And we came up with a kind of a guidance for the teachers, but I can see now that the guidance is by far not enough. First of all, as our students rarely read the articles without questions, that our faculty very rarely read guidances, I feel nowadays. And I also see that the experience of our partner university, another university, which is a part of Agahan Development Network, the Agahan University, which is based in Karachi, in Pakistan, as well as in East Africa, they have a lot of workshops on how to use AI for specific tasks or reasons. For example, now they do workshops on how to write a literature review, or how to make a presentations with Tome. I don't know if you have used it ever or not. There is a kind of new tool to make presentations with AI. So I also feel that AI tools, AI approaches are more easily implemented and kind of more naturally implemented into teaching when they are part of the ecosystem the university uses. For example, our university, which is not, I mention it because it's not that usual for Central Asia to use an ecosystem. We are using Microsoft, and that is why it's another story when you use Bing with ChatGPT in it, as compared to logging in, signing in for ChatGPT. So you just use Bing as part of the Microsoft ecosystem, and it becomes very natural. It becomes kind of easy. Everybody is waiting for Copilot. I believe everybody believes that their life will be made much easier after Copilot comes into play. Let's see. So what I'm just observing here is that as soon as it becomes a natural part of all the tools you are using, it's not something special. It's not any like you don't need to log in it. Then it is a kind of more easy and a more natural stuff to do. And zooming out of the University of Central Asia and looking at the countries, we are operating these 3 countries, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan. I can say that they have very different approaches in terms of the use of AI, of implementation of AI into teaching and learning. We have Kazakhstan, which is I would say the most developed country among these 3 countries. It's been doing, for example, Coursera courses for a long time already. They are buying a large number of Coursera licenses. So they are kind of, and their resources also allow them to be more advanced in terms of digitalization in general. That is what I call here like depths of digitalization of education. How deep are they already? How deeply are they using? How often are they using the digital tools? Also, the regulators' approach to AI is different. For example, Kazakhstan, already 2020, they said that they are welcoming AI. They feel that they can also make kind of a shortcut, because these countries, the former republics of Soviet Union, they are like what we call developing world, and it also concerns education. So they try to make this leap of faith with AI mostly. Also, all the countries are different in terms of their political systems, and some of the countries they restrict also the use of many tools. You cannot use many social networks in Tajikistan, for example. Plus, internet accessibility is an issue here. So not in all places you can access internet easily, and also the costs of using internet is different. So these are mostly things that kind of influence the utilization of AI tools in teaching and higher education. I'm not looking at kindergarten and K11. We still have K11 here. So the big dream, I'm coming to the close, the big dream for now here is that this is more my personal approach. I feel still that the higher education kind of approach, the basic model we are using in Central Asia is still what the late Ken Robinson would call industrial. So we are still trying to put everyone on the same plate. And we hope, and we are looking at countries such as Singapore, which is, I believe, the most prominent here in this area, how all the platforms with AI can help us personalize education. But for now, this is a dream that we dream, but it's not, we do not expect it to come true very soon. So for now, what we would like to see is a competent and professional use of AI tools for enhancement of teaching process, not only the outcomes, but also the process. So many people emphasize that as the outcomes can be produced mostly with AI tools, then we need to look at the process of teaching, at the process of learning most, and plus what is especially important for, and here I invite Valerie to join me and to provide her own perspective on what is going on at our university. For us, it is very important, as we are a residential university, to keep this human dimension, as John has mentioned already. So I can only compliment and say that this is in the discourse about AI tools among the faculty. This is a very like a recurrent topic always, that this is why we are on campuses, because we need to speak to students, we need to spend time with students, we need to provide this dimension. But this is like my last slide, and you can observe the pattern of a Kyrgyz shirdak. So welcome to Kyrgyzstan. A little bit of cultural education as well for you in your evenings mostly. But what I would also say in terms of human dimension, the feeling here goes that the education in these countries in general, I'm not speaking about the University of Central Asia, because when regulators come to us for accreditation, I always feel that this is us who need to accredit them, not them accrediting us. Being an international university, a university aiming at higher standards, a university working with curricula that have been developed by University of Toronto, and so on. So we still have like a higher standard as compared to the general standard in this part of the world. And I feel that this here, so the digital turn, like the use of MOOCs is coming to these countries now. So it's like, it's what happened 20 years or 15 years back in the Western world, let's call it that way. They only look now, they are all excited about Coursera. I'm very cautious about Coursera courses being implemented. They are excited, they say, oh yes, we do it. Kazakhstan does it, then Kyrgyzstan must do it as well. So this is also here that approach. But the feeling the educators share here is that human education will become luxury, and all the AI-powered education and digital education will be available for many, and will be kind of quick and dirty solution in terms of education. So I feel we need to emphasize that we must anyway preserve the human touch. I would prefer to have this talk with you, not online, personally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mariia. Thank you very much for sharing that perspective and for giving us a lot to think about from somewhere else. I'm going to shift gears really quickly now and invite Krissy, followed by Debbie, to present to us. I know a lot of us in this room are from post-secondary, university, and colleges. I recognize some of the names, both from colleges and from universities. So let's take a look at the students that we're going to get, right? What is happening in the K-12 system, and to sort of kind of prepare us of what's in store. So I'm going to ask Krissy to share the screen and to go from there.
All right, can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, well, I was just thinking, wow, no pressure. The students that you're going to get, that's what keeps me up at night, thinking about, am I doing the right thing preparing these kids for what they need? And you all have just been inspiring tonight. There's so many things to think about. So I'll share with you a little bit about the experience I've had using it with kids and using it myself. I have found it to be a great tool. I just had a conversation with our tech director today, and he said, I feel like I have my own personal assistant. And I was like, that's exactly right. Like, for finally, like, I have something to do the little monotonous tasks that I might not want to do every day. And Chat GPT can take care of those things for me, and it's not hurting anyone. So I do work with pre-K through fourth graders. And a lot of the graphics in here I generated with AI. I love a lot of the visual AI tools like Adobe Firefly and any of the visual ones to create graphics. And kids find it fascinating too when we're like, let's come up with a prompt and type it in and see what it creates. And so we do a lot of play with it. Pretty much everything in my classroom is based on play. I'm so jealous of what kids are going to be able to do. But I also, like I said, it keeps me up at night. What can I do to make sure that they have what they need to make sense of this stuff? We talk about like fake videos and things like, I hope to raise them to be skeptical of what's real, and I'm just getting harder and harder every year to tell reality from things that are created. So one of the tools that we use to start, this is what really helped me understand what AI was and how using it with students might possibly be some tools for play. I took an ISTE course a few years back, and we did this Google Draw, quick draw, where you draw things and you see if Google can predict what you're drawing. And it really reminded me of like Pictionary as a kid. And when I show it to students, they get very good at predicting like what parts of the thing they need to draw first. So it becomes like a game. So it is totally a thinking thing, because they're like, oh, if I'm going to draw broccoli, it'll think it's a tree unless I do X, Y, Z to it. So it's a fun way for them to see what AI can do and also just develop their thinking skills. We also use that same tool in an app called Book Creator. And you can see a little piece of pizza that I have on my screen here. I did a little demo of like me drawing a piece of pizza, and then I can go up to the top and pick the piece of pizza. And one of the things I really think about with little kids is some of them can be really hard on themselves. Like they'll say, oh, well, my pizza's not good enough, or my circle's not round enough. And it does worry me when I think about, using some of these tools. And as a recovering perfectionist myself, I could see a kid thinking they need to always use AI because AI is going to do it better. I joked around today, but I was actually kind of serious that I feel like I'm having some sort of existential crisis about some things, because I'm like, why should I try to create it? AI can do it better. And it comes right back to what John said earlier about the human part being first. And the human part is so important. So yes, I can produce a really perfect little piece of pizza. And, if my students are making books for Spanish class to practice their Spanish language, then maybe drawing isn't the goal of the assignment, and it'll allow them to create some great graphics and put the focus on their Spanish language. So I always kind of look at how can this tool be used, just like any other tool that we've had. Next one. So I run a student morning news program, and I run it every single day. And at this point in the year, I am like so tired. And the kids and I were like coming up with ideas. And I said, well, I wonder if ChatGPT can write me some songs. So I started off just putting in like this one, for example. Can you write me a song to the tune of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star? And I said to include pizza and hot dogs and brownies for dessert because that was what we were having for lunch that Friday. And I mean, instantly I get this song back. I'm like, this is amazing. Like now my 8 and 9-year-olds have something to start with to see what a good song looks like. Because I am just like out of ideas at this point in the year. And it's so great to have something that will be a time saver. And so I'm in meetings with people across our campus, and they're all talking about how they're afraid of kids cheating, and and I'm sitting over here like, well, I used it yesterday to create my news script, and it's interesting to see like people's different perspectives on it. There's always things that I'm leery of. I'm always looking at kids' safety and what can I do to make sure they have what they need and that they're empowered to be creative. But I look at something like this and I think, well, they're going to take these songs now and build on them. And I've just leveled up because I am not musical at all. I just leveled up their creativity too. So not only is it saving me time, but it's also inspiring them to create better songs. And it's getting us through the school year. Our tech director shared this with me, and it's called Koala, and you basically can put in a setting and a character, and it will write a story for you. And I immediately thought of this will show my age, but the Choose Your Own Adventure books that as a kid, I was obsessed with. I actually, full disclosure, I hated reading as a kid. I just didn't enjoy it. But those Choose Your Own Adventure books, I like those because I felt like I was creating the story. And when I played with this tool, I immediately thought, man, take a kid who doesn't enjoy reading and let them decide what kind of story it is. And I could see where it could be really empowering for them. Of course, I'm reading it the entire time I'm reading it. I'm thinking, what kind of content is in these stories and, all those things you have to be leery of. But, a lot of the stories I've created with it, they're very like fun, creative, and then the graphics have gotten better. That's what I find so fascinating about all this is it's improving so rapidly. You'll go back to it a couple weeks later, the tool, and you're like, oh, well, the graphics have already improved, or oh, now it reads to you. And this tool today, I just noticed you can tell it what specific skill a child needs to work on. Like you can see that this story here is words with ED. And it'll produce a book in their level with that skill. And I think that, that could be a great tool for kids that aren't interested or kids that have learning differences. I think there's huge potential there. And these schools that, as John said, are like locking and blocking things. I'm like, think about your students with who are on the spectrum or with dyslexia, learning differences, and how these tools are going to be able to really help them get what they need. I just today discovered somebody was making coloring sheets with this, and I was like, well, that would be really cool to make the letters and let kids design their own coloring sheet. And this is like a great end of the year thing. But again, it's just another use for it. And I'm not saying like making a coloring sheet is going to change the world or anything. But I'm also kind of jealous of kids that they can say, oh, I want to come up with a coloring sheet. That's my name. I always tell the students when I was a kid, I could never get my name on things because they never had Krissy spelled with a K. And they can just produce this stuff, with their imaginations. But it always does come back to their imaginations. So I always, as much as I love all this stuff, and I have this little graphic here, everything in this picture was created with AI. And I ironically made cardboard things in this picture because it always comes back to like physical materials for me and kids getting their hands on things. So I think this could be an awesome tool for kids to continue developing their thinking and getting creative, but it'll always come back to the human first. And I have a perfect example of that. This 6-year-old in my class made this little keychain with her name on it. And she has her little A drawn backwards, which I just absolutely love because it's her handwriting and her cute little cupcake that she drew. And I look at the AI cupcake and I think, well, the cupcake with AI is very cute. It's a little creepy with its giant eyes. But I look at her cupcake and I'm like, that's Amelia. That's the human that created this, and the tech tool allows us to laser cut it, but she created that with her imagination. And so it always comes back to like those special things that are just human centered. And so I'll always say before kids really focus on AI, I want them to build their actual intelligence. I want them to know how to create. And I don't want them to look at their pizza and think it's not good enough. I want them to know how to use the tools and then empower them to use the tools. It's just little creatures at the bottom here that were made of cardboard that are moving. Those were created by kids from scratch. And they didn't do any AI to generate that. That was their brains and their imaginations. And so that'll always be like at the forefront for me. But it's really exciting to think about where we're going to be able to go with all these tools that are coming available. Exciting and a little bit scary. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Krissy. This is a very interesting perspective around the whole creativity and also the children with different abilities and different ways of learning, how we can use these tools to more personalize their learning. So Debbie, it's 10 to 10 or 10 minutes to, so you have the last few minutes, and then hopefully we'll get to questions. And I just want everybody to know that we'll stick around for a while after as well. So if you have to leave at the top of the hour, whatever that is, please feel free to do so, because we know time is our most valuable commodity with AI or without. But if you have to leave, that's fine. But we will also stick around for more conversation. And there's a question quickly about the presentations will be posted, and this session is being recorded, so you can get all of those things. Okay, Debbie, over to you.
Okay, here we go. Mine is very short, and I don't, it's a lot of reading, so I don't want to take up the time because I'd rather have the conversations, but I just went through and I showed examples of how I use it, but it's not really with kids. So I did essential questions, and I showed, it says at the top, I'm just showing you screenshots of what I used it for as we have to write curriculum right now, and we're doing all that. So I did a bunch of essential questions. Then I did a prompt for a parent letter, and then I shared the actual letter I wrote from it, a job description from AI, and then the actual job description, and it's all on the website. And then, but my conclusion, I thought, well, how about it write me a conclusion for what I think about AI? And basically, I agree with what it came up with, is that AI is a great place to start, and I think that's kind of what we all said. So you can catch all of what I had to share on the website, but like I said, I'd rather us all talk because there have been so many great points made by everybody else.
Okay, so I'm going to put the link to the specific page to the website in the chat in a minute. And so thank you, Debbie, for that. I'm sorry it was so short. And I'm definitely going to check out your presentation that you've posted, but opening it up to questions. So if you have a question, put your hand up. And unless there's like a chaos, go ahead and ask questions one at a time. So who wants to be first? And first, before we get into the questions, thank you. Like, I'm just leaving this with so many great ideas, things to ponder, reflect on, and also things that I need to start sort of learning more about. There's been so many reflective pieces, especially not only from the presentations, but some of the comments as the presentations were related to the presentations that's been posted in the chat. So we're going to capture all of that and share it on the website. So if who wants to ask the first question? I think it is a person has been asking several times in the chat, and I forget who it is, maybe just to get the ball rolling here, is about if when you're showing the creativity elements of all the different things that, you know, AI is helping us to do, if there's any kind of explanation to the kids that AI learns from work that people actually created in the first place, like humans created. I think I'm summarizing that question wrong, but you get the gist. So I think that's a question that was asked during Krissy's presentation.
Yeah, I can answer. We definitely have those conversations. You know, before we really started using a lot of AI, we would talk about how the graphics we use were created by a photographer or someone took the picture, because it always was like a little kind of irked me when kids would say, oh, I got this image, this is Google created this. And I'm like, no, so a person made that. And so it was very natural for moving into AI to talk about how these things come to be. And with Google Draw, they actually show you how it's training itself based on other people's drawings. So, you know, it's a great way to show them like that different people have worked to build these things. I found it fascinating when Adobe Firefly came out. They have a copyright little watermark that they put in the bottom of every single one of their graphics that you make on there. It says created with Adobe Firefly. And they're also, since they're in beta mode, it's not for commercial use. But I was like, that was one of the only tools that actually has on it the name of the tool that was used. And my kids at school said, well, where did Adobe get those graphics? And I was like, wow, that is a great question. You know, so I think the younger kids just get it. When we use the 5-year-olds graphics on our news show, they're like, don't forget to put my name in the corner. And they're really like, they're really, really cognizant of copyright in a way that older kids just were not on their own. So that's good to see too.
Thank you for that, Krissy. Anybody else has another question that you want to ask? Now, I think John has left the building, and I know that, no, he's still here.
John is here with his hand up.
Okay, John, go ahead. You're not in my field of view.
Actually, Mariia had her hand up first, so I'm gonna let her go, and then I'll go. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I might be having a question that will sound too philosophical for this discussion, but this is a question to Krissy, by the way. Thank you very much for a fascinating presentation. I have a question, the following question. So usually when you look at art, especially in kindergarten or preschool, or the first grades in school, it's messy. I still remember how I struggled with it. It's like, and now you can create whatever you want with just prompting an AI tool. And you kind of skip all this messy part when you struggle and you think. And my question is, do you think, and sometimes when I do it, I'm not preschool or kindergarten anymore, but when I create an image in DALL-E or Midjourney, it's like this. So you have the idea, it will give you the image, you will have it. So what do you think, how will it impact the feeling of ownership of work? Like, I sometimes struggle to say that it is my work. I still feel that it is like kind of not very much mine. So this is my question. I'm sorry for a long question.
I think that's such a great question. And the messiness of kids' work is like one of the things I find the most precious. It's like, I can look at a drawing and be like, oh, that's Bobby's drawing because he always draws the eyes like that. Or, you know, you can see like little things of their personality come out in that. And when you look at something from AI, a lot of it has a look to it now. Like I started like noticing when I was like, oh, that's AI generated. And some things look a little strange sometimes. But I do think like with a 5-year-old, if we just like skip over them actually doing the creating and then they just start like instantly creating something, they're going to miss out on that whole beautiful process of creating. And I find that when I use it, I go back and forth. Like sometimes it inspires me or springboards me to create something on my own. But yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. And I think about that with
So going back to the question before about do you have conversations with students about this? I have had those conversations
materials, sensory stuff
with my own students, and even with my son, who's super into art. He wants to major in art. He loves doing AI generated art, but then taking that and then making it his own with Photoshop, and he goes back and forth and uses it seamlessly as a tool. And there's sort of two different views that you can have about the source of the large data that it's pulling from, right? And there's obviously more than two, but there's sort of two ways that we've thought about it in conversation. One is it's similar to going to a museum, feeling inspired, and creating something new that's a mashup of other art styles, right? That all art itself is going to be derivative, and that we are influenced by this chorus of culture all around us. Nothing that we create is ever completely our own. Or is it more like sampling from music, where guess what? It doesn't matter if you were influenced or not. If you took someone else's riff, if you took someone else's beats, if you took someone else's art, you better not only provide attribution, you legally are required to not just cite that, but to pay. And I don't know if we've completely culturally defined that. We know AI art itself it can't be copyrighted because of that Supreme Court case connected to the monkey that took the picture, right? I forget the name of that. But I think we really wrestle with that. And I think it's a fun conversation, even at a younger age, to have students wrestle with, which is how much of my voice is my voice and how much of it is I'm standing on the shoulders of people before me, people around me, things like that. And I think it becomes a really rich philosophical kind of conversation to have that goes beyond just AI. The other thing that I'll say about AI generated art that we have to bring students into the conversation around is that bias exists in the art too, especially around things like skin tone, right? And we've seen this over and over again with AI generated art. So we need to be real careful at a younger age about teaching students that AI generated art is going to have the same cultural biases that all art is going to contain. Like it's not going to be bias free. So sorry, I just realized my air conditioning is super loud. Can y'all hear me?
We cannot hear the AC.
All right, good.
Meanwhile, we're freezing in Toronto. It's going down to 0 tonight.
I love that you think I can. I think that's 32, 34. I don't remember what that means in Fahrenheit.
Minus.
I'll be the dumb American who can never convert it. All I know is it's Oregon and it's not supposed to be 92 degrees, and that's what it is here in Oregon.
All right. Thank you very much for that. And I think for me, one of the things I'm most concerned about right now as I, play around with these tools is this bias. All of the biases are getting super intensified from the information that is being generated. And I know last week, John, there was a really good session about the whole ethics and accessibility and bias, and that is posted on the website. And if anybody missed that session, Sarush and Barbara, who are here tonight, were part of that panel. I really suggest you listen to that. There was a lot of great information and sort of perspectives shared. Anybody else with a question? Anybody else has a question? Anything that was asked in the chat that I missed? I know there's a big debate going on about the whole essay. Is the essay dead and gone or not? So that's a very interesting discussion to look at if you haven't been looking at the chat. Lisa, I see you've come online. Do you have a question?
I just wanted to bring up a couple of things that have come up in the chat and conversation. And hi, John. I read a lot of your stuff, and we've connected, and it's good to see you. One thing is, people here don't know, but I invented French toast, but I called it egg bread. I was not influenced by anyone else. I came up with it when I was about 7 years old. And as I wrote in the chat, there are a lot of people getting in legal trouble because they're using someone else's work, and they may have never heard the work, but they were born after that person. So I do want to bring up, it's really important to know that sometimes when someone says it's their original idea, even though someone came up with it prior, they might not have known that, and they were just born after them. So I did invent egg bread / French toast. And that sounds a little silly, but it's really important in this conversation. Also, I'm so excited that the essay will not be our way to prove learning, because it's one way, but there are so many better ways. And I'm really excited to figure out and learn with people how that happens in the future. And thank you for all of everyone's amazing insights so far. I really appreciate them. And as I said in the past, I would be on camera more, but it's late in New York City and I'm doing things you don't want to see on camera. Not anything bad, but just like eating and preparing for bed. Thanks,
Actually,
everyone.
Linda, you kind of make a very interesting point that you think you invented egg bread and French toast, and maybe you invented it in North America. But where I grew up in Guyana, my ancestors from 400 years ago had a very similar dish. And we have a Portuguese word for it that is not French toast nor egg bread. So I think that's a very good,
Yes.
The whole bias and your perspective of culturally and where you're coming from. So that's a very interesting. So thank you for kind of dropping that into this conversation. I bet everybody has a story that they could add on to that. That's where I'm going with that. I don't know if I did a good job, but I hope you get what I meant. Yes. Any other questions? And thank you for everybody who's still here. It's after the time when the session is technically supposed to come to an end. And I really, really appreciate all the conversations. And I see people are posting that in the chat. And as I said again, especially for you taking the time to be here with us. And I know a lot of people have been looking at these recordings because a lot of my colleagues have told me, I mean, it's 10 o'clock at night. So for some people, it's just impossible to join at this time, but they are looking at the recording. So I think our audience is much wider than the audience that shows up here. So thank you very much for that. And now I'm going to stop talking and let anybody else who wants to say anything, add anything at all to the conversation.
Well, I think it's an opportunity for lots of people. There was so much said tonight and so much to think about for lots of people. So I'd like to bring, if there's anybody in here, into the conversation that hasn't had their voice heard, and tell us a few of the things that, and it's a good thing Kirk left because I was going to pick on him. He probably knew that I was going to, oh, there he is. I see him. Okay, you're still there. Kirk, did you want to jump in and tell us what you thought? What stood out for you tonight?
You're giving me a hard time, are you, Susan?
I am.
It sounds good. It was a fantastic, always a thought-provoking conversation. There's so much to learn in this group, and I'm really enjoying it. I've tried to keep a low profile, so thank you, Susan, for throwing me right out into the abyss here. A question came up. Mariia mentioned about AI improving access to basic education, and the idea that we teachers themselves may become a luxury. I was wondering if maybe you should expand on that a little bit, Mariia. I thought it was a really interesting idea that AI could actually become sort of a base level of education instead of increasing and improving education. Any thoughts on that?
Well, basically, this thought come, if it is a question to me, probably everybody else can join or say something. But in this part of the world, the problem is finding good teachers. So that is resources like money and finding really good teachers is a big problem. And educating good teachers is a big investment. So it's kind of seems natural that instead of educating many teachers, instead of finding them, and then as soon as they become above the average, they leave the country. That's the tendency here, more or less. As soon as they become outstanding, they either leave, especially public institutions, they suffer on this turnover. We at the University of Central Asia pay way above the market. Every semester, 1/4 of my population of faculty members changes. So it's the retaining of faculty members, of teachers is a huge problem. So why not use MOOCs? Why not use AI? So that's the idea. Probably I'm missing something here, but this is basically it for me.
Yeah, I just thought it was really interesting to frame it that way as an equity issue, because I thought about it from an access standpoint when it comes to technology in general, but to flip it around to that AI is going to be so pervasive that it could actually replace that sort of base level of education, and that it'll become a luxury, almost a pay for a service to get a teacher is something just kind of a new thought for me. So I appreciated that. So thanks, Mariia.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kirk, for jumping in there. Rachel, did you want to jump in and just, what did you think about tonight? Anything stand out for you? What are you thinking? Okay, Rachel might not be with us. I'll ask you, Aaron.
Sorry, I would have been on the entire time, but I'm dog sitting. I want to keep 3 dogs out the camera. I would have distracted everybody.
Okay.
What was the question again?
Well, the question was, I love that when people do that. I love catching you off guard too. Is there something that stood out for you tonight? Something, a thought that came to you, an idea or anything?
So, we're talking about what Mariia brought up about the teachers being a luxury, and when she was talking about that, I was thinking like, well, it's really true. And when we have these classes where all we're doing is we're regurgitating information, then yeah, why can't AI do that? We have this AI voice is telling everything, and we're just regurgitating the information from a textbook or something. And that's where the difference is between, a really good teacher and what a true teacher is we're not just regurgitating, we're giving actual human thought into it. Sorry, you can hear one of the puppies. You can see that. And so, what you're saying, it's hard to find these teachers. And so, for certain things, I'm not saying we want to have courses where the full context and the full content of the course is regurgitation of information. That's where AI can have a small portion of it, and then bring in the human thought, the actual teacher, if we can, if it's available. Which is it's hard. It's hard to find a good teacher, and especially we're dealing with an intergenerational divide to a degree. As when we're talking about higher education, and so we have some teachers maybe the end of their tenure, as it were, and they don't want to bring in these these AI portions, or seeing how it could help them and maybe reinvent themselves, and they kind of get stagnant in their coursework. I've taught this 20 years, and if it's not broken, it'll fix it, but it is broken, and it may not have been broken back when you started, but it's broken now when we have these new generations of students coming in that are completely different than who you taught 20 years ago. And this is where the AI portion can come into play a little bit, and reinvent, if the, the older generation are open to it, and that's what's needed. If you want to stay, current and stay valid in today's educational, sphere, this is needed, and you need to understand it. You need to know where the shortcomings are and how this can help you and reinvent yourselves, so you're not becoming stagnant, and you don't get the bad ratings on you rate your professor, which I don't know if it's still a thing, but and then Krissy's presentation was awesome. And when I'm thinking about that, is I go back to the library sphere, where art classes, these are great programs to introduce technology skills and computer skills in the STEAM sense in the libraries, as well as in the elementary schools. But there's always this connection that needs to happen, that the library picks up the slack that doesn't happen in the schools. So if you have that connection where, in my art class, we're learning, these technology skills using the new AI portions, and we bring that into the library programming after schools and on the weekends. And then from there, I always think about, when it comes to library programming, is how do you scale it to an older generation? So, you start out with the kids programs, but then you have the teen programs, and then you have the adult programs, and then you have the senior citizen programs. So scalability, everything is so interconnected when it comes to AI, and you just have to understand how it can be scaled from the younger generations all the way to the college students, all the way into, the older generations.
So I did finally find my unmute button. And those were good points, Aaron. This is Rachel.
Hi.
So my perspective on this, so I'm not one of the older generation faculty members, and I'm fascinated by AI. But I work as a faculty member and in instructional design. So I work with the LMS, the learning interface for students. And what I'm worried about, so of course, a lecture course where some sort of fossilized, I don't want to be unkind, but fossilized sort of approach to teaching happens, where you give the same lectures that you've given for the last 15 years. Of course, that's actually not a good way to teach. That I'm just saying what I think here. But what will go missing if universities start to rely on AI to replace a lot of the teaching interactions. So the good kind of teaching, which is when it's an interaction between the faculty member and the students, that's something that's sort of it's never the same from semester to semester if you take into account, the individual students who are in your classroom, and also their human needs. And it's not just about, helping them learn the content, but also helping them to understand why they should learn it and helping them to care about it. And those are things that AI, well, it can't create a relationship, a genuine one, with a genuine human relationship with students. And I think that's what adds value. And I'm really concerned because I've heard the plans and I've seen it happening. And in cash poor institutions, they would love to use more AI to replace, human instructors. So that was what I wanted to add.
I'll jump in again if that's okay. It would be great if AI, oh look, I'm so blurry. Hold on. It would be great if AI helped educational institutions bring out the humans in us. I'm someone who went to school with very little connection with teachers. They spoke, I listened, and I work in education myself today. So if AI brings out the human in education, that would be fantastic. But I also want to be very real about the fact that there's not so much of that today. So it would, if that's what we can get AI to do, that would be fantastic. And to what was just said, it is quite often I'm hearing that students feel much more connected to AI than they have felt connected to their human instructors. So I think if it's a challenge for human instructors to beat AI, that's a fantastic thing. That's all.
Mariia, go ahead.
I just want to jump into this discussion that Rachel just started about the difference between human instructors and AI as an instructor. We always, like very often we speak as educators, we speak that AI lacks this empathy and stuff like that. But what I observe is the human instructors often lack empathy. They are often very rude. They are often very intimidating. And the problem of the, even if they are nice, they would have one or probably two answers to your question. As a student being in this age when they struggle just to ask a question with this human interaction, they struggle with the human interaction. They always find intimidated by instructors. You know, I am telling it to you because what I spend my time with is I'm looking at the course evaluations. I go to the classes, I speak to students. They would often say, we can't ask this instructor, we don't understand the answer. Even if we ask the instructor, we often do. And ChatGPT is never tired. It's always open. It's I always use, I don't know how you use ChatGPT, but I always say, please, can you come up with? As if I interact with a human. And it would always give me the response, sure, I'm glad to help. Isn't it not empathy? And I'm sometimes scared that, I don't know, I mean, now we need to look at our learning outcomes. What is it we want them to learn? What is it significant for them to learn? I understand I'm getting too emotional now, maybe, but one of the things, practical things I'm thinking about at the moment is that I work with the instructors, and Valerie knows that even better than me. I struggle to explain to them how to write a learning outcome. And I usually would go to Bloom, which is only cognitive mostly. Poor Bloom. He had all the other domains, but everybody looks at cognitive only, right? But now I'm really thinking, probably I need to go to DeFink with the taxonomy of significant learning, with all these notions of care and learning how to learn, so that going slightly above the usual, so to say, like what Rachel has said. 15 times of recycling the same stuff and recycling whatever you do, because it's a big challenge for people to change. We face the challenge to change now as instructors, as teachers. I'm sorry to use the word instructors. I know in English it sounds very kind of blunt.
I love what Mariia said in terms of how AI seems to have infinite patience, because at that level, it's a great reminder to all of us when we see that we need to reincorporate that into our work if we're not already doing it. I personally know I can never hear that enough.
I'm just wondering if I have to do a presentation for the faculty in the school that I teach in Seneca, if I would be raised off of the screen if I said, think about ChatGPT. Mariia, this is priceless, because it's true, and I've never considered that. You know, all this talk about human, and we have many, all of us have days when we're tired, and, you know, the same student is asked the same question 14 times, and all we want to say is read the course outline. If I, you know, provide this notion of AI being always there, patient, never tired, always open. I mean, that's something that we should really think about, that I've never thought about before in all of my thinking about AI. So very interesting, Mariia. And just as a note, I first got involved with the University of Central Asia in with Global Affairs Canada and Aga Khan Foundation for their preparatory year program all the way back in 2016. So I've been involved in some way since then. But I've been to Kyrgyzstan twice, but not since pre-COVID. So a lot of our interactions are virtual. And just to put a kind of note there, as so you know where I'm involved with UCA. And Karen has her hand up.
Thanks, Valerie. So the question that you had about the fact that AI, Chat GPT, is endlessly patient is something that I've been looking at because I'm working on an AI project. And one of the things I postulated was, could we use AI with people who have dementia? And what will that do? One of the problems that people have is as people age and you get into the repetitious cycle of people telling me the same stories over and over again, is that people become frustrated and angry. And so honestly, I'm hoping by the time I need care, I've got a robot man, because it won't care that I have just told the same story 10 times in a row. Right? And I'm sure all of us are dealing with elderly parents, and there are times when I make sure that I don't say any of the trigger words to my mom, or I'll be listening to the same story again. And so that is something people do lack patience. It is tiring. We all have other concerns and issues that we need to deal with. And that distracts us sometimes from the job of sitting down and actually teaching the people that we're supposed to teach. Now, I'm lucky because I started out as an elementary teacher, so that when I went into instructional design and doing learning systems for adults, I can't stand Addie. I always use backward design, which is, what do you need to know? What do you need to know? Because that's how you have to do it at an elementary level. What do you need